Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really heavy but absolutely crucial topic: human trafficking in Thailand. Because, let's be real, when human labor gets treated like just another cheap commodity, the very foundation of human security is deeply threatened. We're going to break down the hard data and the actual realities of this crisis directly from our source material, so we can really grasp the sheer scale of what's going on. Here's the agenda for today. We'll be walking through this data logically, covering the scale of the crisis, the root causes, the cross-border links, the devastating human toll, some actionable solutions, and finally, the rigorous sources that made this analysis possible. Let's start with Section 1, the human security crisis. People are not for sale. This foundational principle really anchors our entire explainer today. It's so incredibly important to remember that behind every single statistic we're about to look at, there are real vulnerable human beings. The source data points out that most of these victims are migrants, primarily from Myanmar, who were literally just seeking better lives and opportunities for their families. Now, I want you to focus on this number: 622. According to official government data, that is the exact number of human trafficking victims rescued in Thailand over the entirety of 2018. Just think about that for a second. That is hundreds of lives completely upended by exploitation. But here's what's genuinely terrifying: the acceleration. By just partway through 2019, year to date, that number had already surged to 974 rescued victims. It's an explosive increase that really set the stage for a tragic record high, and it represents a massive escalation in human suffering. To kind of put that surge into perspective, the previous annual high was 982 victims, and that was recorded back in 2015. So this alarming spike in 2019 put Thailand under some intense international scrutiny. The data clearly shows the country was at immediate risk of surpassing its worst historical records. Naturally, this raised some very serious, urgent questions about both global and local efforts to fight this illegal trade.
Moving right along to Section 2, root causes of trafficking.
Now, a crisis like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It usually starts with poverty and deep economic desperation. People migrate illegally because they simply lack opportunities and income back home, and that leads to unsafe migration routes. Without legal pathways, migrants become incredibly vulnerable. Then you've got the pull factor, which is employers demanding low-cost labor. That's essentially the economic engine for all this exploitation. Traffickers take full advantage of weak border protection, and ultimately, organized syndicates use pure deception to transport and exploit these folks. It's basically a perfect storm of vulnerability and predatory behavior.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Malaysian connection.
The geographic trafficking route between Thailand and Malaysia is a primary artery for this whole crisis. The intense demand for low-cost migrant labor in Malaysia actively incentivizes these trafficking networks. They mobilize to recruit, transport, and illegally sneak vulnerable workers across these specific borders just to meet that massive demand. This quote perfectly captures the core injustice at play here. The search for cheap labor should never cost a human being his or her freedom. It really hits the nail on the head. Economic demand in one country is directly fueling human subjugation and the total loss of basic liberty across borders.
Next up, Section 4, impact on human lives.
The impact here is distinctly twofold. On one hand, we've got the agonizing physical toll. Victims are forced into labor in factories, agriculture, construction, and fishing, and they frequently face severe physical and sexual abuse. But we also have to weigh the profound emotional toll. These individuals are entirely stripped of their freedom. Undocumented migrants faced intense discrimination, which leads to long-term trauma, deep-seated fear, and insecurity. Their dignity, equality, and basic human rights are just completely taken away from them.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 5, breaking the chain.
So how do we fix this? Well, tackling this massive issue requires a really comprehensive multi-step chain of action. First off, we need way stronger cooperation between Thailand and Malaysia. We're talking better intelligence sharing and joint border management operations. Second, there absolutely has to be better protection for migrants, ensuring their legal rights and safe working conditions. Third, authorities need to take strict, uncompromising action to investigate, prosecute, and impose maximum penalties on these trafficking syndicates. Fourth, we've got to set up safe, affordable legal migration channels so people don't have to rely on smugglers. Fifth, public awareness campaigns are vital for educating communities about the risks and their rights. And finally, we need robust support and rehabilitation. That means shelter, counseling, medical care, and skills training to help victims actually reintegrate into society. It really takes this complete ecosystem of solutions to make a difference.
And finally, Section 6, Acknowledgements and Sources.
Before we wrap up, we definitely want to give direct credit for the vital academic curation of this crisis. This explainer was put together through the dedicated, meticulous work of Siti Sara Wardina binti Sheikh Ibrahim, Jawhar Tudi Dini binti Ahmad, and Abuzar bin Azizan. Their effort in distilling such a highly complex and urgent issue is deeply, deeply appreciated. We also want to ensure absolute transparency by highlighting the rigorous data sources used to construct these slides. The numbers and insights we covered today are drawn directly from 2019 Reuters reporting, official data from the Thailand Government Anti-Trafficking Division, the U.S. Department of State's Trafficking and Persons Report, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Grounding our understanding in verified international data is exactly how we start to actually comprehend and tackle this massive problem.
I'm going to leave you with this final vital thought. People are not for sale. Human security is everyone's responsibility. Ultimately, breaking the chain, restoring dignity, and building a safer future is a collective duty that every single one of us shares. So looking at the data, the root causes, and the very real human lives at stake, what role will you play in demanding better human security? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.